Eddie Burton's story is one that shatters expectations. At just 23 years old, he became the mastermind behind one of the largest and most complex drug networks in Europe and the UK. Unlike the violent criminals we often picture, Eddie operated quietly and discreetly, building a multi-million-pound operation that smuggled heroin, cocaine, and ketamine without drawing attention. This is not a story about street-level drug sellers trying to make money on the corner. This story is about a young man who began as a small-time player and slowly but surely built a £20 million drug empire across Europe. It was founded on control, secrecy, and a level of preparation that made it almost impossible to trace rather than violence or chaos. Eddie Burton was not just another name on a police list. He was a ghost, an expert at making sure his name was never connected to the drugs he moved. Everything began in Liverpool, where Eddie Burton was a little kid trying to understand life. But while his peers were worrying about school, Eddie, on the other hand, was already starting to walk the line between curiosity and criminal behavior. Eddie was already dabbling in the streets, doing errands for older kids, carrying small amounts of drugs, and learning how the system worked, all by the time he turned 10. Unlike the others close to him, Eddie was not in it for the quick thrill. He wasn't trying to get rich off the street hustle. Eddie had much bigger ideas. By 13, he wasn't just running errands anymore. He was watching, learning, and sharpening his skills. Eddie was laying the groundwork for something much bigger, while the other kids were worried about impressing their friends or trying to make a name for themselves. He learned how to move unnoticed, when to disappear, and when it was time to blend in. He observed the couriers and dealers around him, picking up on the patterns of the business, how to spot the police before they saw you, and how to stay out of sight. Eddie knew one thing: surviving on the streets meant staying hidden, quiet, and building trust with the right people, not being the fastest or the loudest. Eddie's role in the street economy changed as he got older. By the time he was 16, he wasn't just another courier. He had moved beyond that role. He was already orchestrating some of the deals in Liverpool, working behind the scenes and starting to move away from the physical product. Eddie didn't want to get involved in the conflict or violence sometimes tied to the drug trade. Instead, he focused on control. He wanted to distribute drugs without physically handling them. He wanted to be the one pulling the strings from behind the scenes, with no one ever knowing his name. Liverpool was starting to feel too small for him. Although he knew the ropes, he wanted to expand globally. At 19, Eddie quietly left Liverpool. No goodbyes, no big announcements. He went to Amsterdam, a city known for its connections to international trafficking networks and its anonymity. For Eddie, Amsterdam wasn't a place to relax. It was a smart move, an opportunity to grow his business, set up a base of operations away from unwanted attention, and begin creating the global network that would come to define his empire. While others in Amsterdam might have been more interested in the nightlife, Eddie was concentrating on logistics. He wasn't just smuggling drugs into the city. He was setting up the systems and networks that would make it all possible, controlling the entire flow of drugs. Eddie only needed to regulate the system. He did not have to physically come into contact with the drugs. Remaining ahead of the law, he kept a low profile in Amsterdam while transporting large volumes of drugs across Europe using couriers, fake identities, and hidden networks. Amsterdam wasn't enough for him, however. As Eddie's operation grew, so did the need for more distance, more cover. He required a foundation that would enable him to run without being noticed. Therefore, Eddie opted to relocate once more, this time to Spain. A sunny, serene country that provided him with the ideal setting to keep creating his empire, Spain was the ideal place. It was about establishing another layer of security, a place he could stay out of the spotlight and keep building his network undetected. Sean Banks, Eddie's partner in crime, was still in the UK as he sought to grow his empire in Spain. To the outside world, Sean was simply another Instagram celebrity leading a lavish lifestyle. Holidays in exotic spots, designer bags, and poolside lounging photographs. Behind the scenes, Sean was absolutely vital to Eddie's activities. Sean was ensuring everything ran smoothly back in the UK, as Eddie was handling the logistics from Spain. She ensured the drugs remained flowing undetected, cleaned the money, and managed the couriers. Sean traveled to Amsterdam and Spain, often from June 2022 to October 2023. She seemed to be just another tourist at first glance, but actually she was running the whole enterprise from behind the curtain. Sean was discovered attempting to smuggle narcotics into the UK on 2 different days. She carried drugs, ketamine and cocaine, totally under the radar, hidden in her luggage. To the authorities, she appeared like nothing more than a tourist. She had no criminal history. But behind the scenes, Sean was heavily involved in the logistics of the operation, making sure everything kept running smoothly. The first real break in the case happened in July 2022. Border Force stopped a truck in Dover. At first it seemed normal. The papers were good, the driver was relaxed, and the load looked real. But when they checked the truck, they found about 90 kilos of ketamine and 50 kilos of cocaine hidden under shopping bags and boxes. The drugs were hidden well, but the lab technicians found Eddie Burton's prints on the wrapping. He wasn't there, but it looked like he was involved. About 6 weeks later, they stopped another truck with 142 kilos of cocaine and 25 kilos of heroin. This time, the drugs were in a modified fuel tank, a professional hiding spot. But again, they found Eddie Burton's prints. He hadn't crossed the border, but it was obvious he was tied to it. Even if he wasn't there in person, the proof pointed right at him. As the detectives looked closer, they found a bunch of secret messages, cheap phones, and flight info. Sean's trips to Amsterdam and Spain, which seemed normal before, now looked like part of the scheme. She wasn't just traveling, she was helping run things, lining up deliveries, and keeping everything on track. By the middle of 2023, they had enough to start looking for Eddie Burton all over the world. The police in Spain and the Netherlands teamed up with the National Crime Agency. His downfall, however, came in the most unlikely place in August, a VIP section at a nightclub in Ibiza. There was no high-speed chase, no dramatic standoff, just a swift arrest that revealed a vast criminal network spanning multiple countries. Eddie thought he was untouchable, hiding in plain sight, but he was wrong. His whole operation fell apart. The extradition process was quick. By March 2024, he was back in the UK, and detectives had a mountain of evidence piled up against him. We're talking plane tickets, secret messages, those cheap, disposable phones, and even forensic evidence that put him right at the scene with the drugs. It was a rock-solid case. Before Eddie was sent back, Sean Banks was arrested in December 2023. Her phone was like a complete record for the whole operation. It had messages about when shipments were going down, where the drops were, and what the couriers needed to do. She wasn't just helping out, she was essential. Together, she and Eddie set up this big-time international drug business, going all the way from Liverpool to Amsterdam and over to Spain. Fast forward to February 2025. Eddie Burton and Sean Banks are in court. Eddie says he's guilty of 4 charges of bringing in heroin, cocaine, ketamine, and cannabis. The judge described Eddie as cold and calculated, a real criminal mastermind who managed the whole thing without ever touching the drugs himself. Then Sean Banks admitted she had committed 7 serious crimes, like money laundering and importing drugs. They said she was crucial to keeping things running, especially since Eddie liked to stay out of the picture. Eddie was sentenced to 24 years in prison, and Sean got 17. Their drug operation went on for years and made millions, with tons of people involved who didn't even know they were part of something so big. But in the end, Their quiet, careful business fell apart because of a couple of small mistakes, and because secrets never stay buried forever. The Eddie Burton and Sean Banks story really makes you think. It shows that the drug world isn't just thugs fighting in the streets. Sometimes, it's about staying in charge, keeping quiet, and being able to move around without getting caught. But even with all their careful plans and being so secretive, they learnt that no matter how good you are, nothing lasts forever. What's your take on how they ran things? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you're into hearing more stories like this, give a quick like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next one.